Hello, everyone. My name is Rashid Ali. I'm an RCIC based in Ontario, Canada. And Canada has recently announced the immigration levels plan for 2026 to 2028. And I will be discussing some of the most important updates from this plan. The reason this plan is so important is because it lets you know how many people Canada wants in the future, how many permanent residents, how many students, how many workers. So if you're planning to work in Canada or study in Canada, or perhaps even immigrate to Canada, this plan is very important for you. And there have been some drastic changes in the immigration levels planned for the next few years. So I'll take you through those today. But before we start looking into the immigration levels plan in detail, let's just quickly talk about how does Canada actually decide how many immigrants, international students, or temporary foreign workers to welcome each year. It's not random. Every year, the government goes through a process called the Immigration Levels Consultation. And for 2026 to 2028 plan, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada heard from a record number of people. Between July and August of this year, more than 8,500 organizations, including schools, employers, provinces, economists, francophone groups, and individuals shared their views on immigration. So, what did Canadians say? Almost everyone agreed that Canada does need immigrants, but they also said that immigration must match the country's capacity, things like housing, healthcare, and infrastructure. Organizations generally wanted levels to stay the same or increase slightly to fill the job gaps because some employers find it very hard to recruit workers, while individuals felt that the numbers were already too high, especially because of the housing crisis and service pressures, for example, burden on healthcare system. So people also called for faster credential recognition, better language training, stronger employment support for newcomers. There was also broad support for attracting more French speaking immigrants outside of Quebec and making it easier for them to get PR. In short, Canadians don't want to stop immigration, they want it to be smarter and more sustainable. And Canada's goal now is to balance immigration with the current situation of the country. So that's the direction of the 2026-2028 immigration levels plan, focused on quality, stability, and long-term sustainability. Now let's take a quick look at what that actually looks like in numbers. The overall number for permanent residents remain roughly the same in both plans. So you have uh, you have two projections that you can see. The first projection is last year, what the numbers were for 2026 versus 2025's projection. This column shows what the new plan projects the number for next year. So they're both looking at 2026, one from the previous immigration levels plan that was shared last year, and the column on the right is this year's number. So as you can see, the PR number is the same basically, but there are differences in different categories of PRs. The biggest shift is in the economic category. This includes programs that bring skilled workers, entrepreneurs, caregivers, etc. And it covers federal high skilled programs like Express Entry, federal skilled worker program, skilled trades, Canadian Experience Class, starter visa, self-employed persons, which is on hold for now, and it also includes economic pilots like caregiver pilot program, agri-food, rural and francophone community immigration pilot, etc. So all of these are included in this. The Atlantic Immigration Program, PNPs, and Quebec Immigration are also part of the economic category. So while the total economic admissions are actually up slightly from 2,200, 2,000, 200,029 to 239,000, the balance inside the category has changed dramatically. So express entry is taking a hit, dropping from 122,000 to 109,000, which is a significant decrease in Canada's flagship immigration program. But the provincial nominee program is the big winner, jumping from 55,000 slots to 91,500. So that's a big, big change. And federal business programs have been cut in half from 1,000 to just 500 admissions, which primarily includes the SARDA visa. H&C cases are down sharply from 10,000 to almost 7,000. On the temporary side, this change is even more dramatic. The total number of temporary residents allowed to enter Canada next year has been slashed from 516,000 to only 385,000 people. That includes temporary workers, down from 368,000 to 230,000. So, all of those workers who were coming here with or without an LMIA, their number has been cut significantly. International students have been cut in half. Now, that is a very, very drastic change. The initial target for 2026 was to invite almost 305,000 international students, but the new target is 155,000. So, this will mean that a lot of organizations, especially colleges, will be impacted. People will probably lose their jobs, especially those teaching in these colleges. There will be big budget cuts. But for those who are looking to apply for study permit, this also means that the study permit refusal rate might go up because the visa officers will be under no pressure to approve your study permits, right? They already know that they have to meet this target. They can't approve more than 155,000 applicants, which means that it will become even more important to really think through your study permit application. Um, Especially those programs that have a higher approval rate, maybe master's degrees from reputable universities, would be a much better strategy than, let's say, compared to applying to a lesser known college for a 2 year diploma. So the Canada's immigration plan looks like the numbers have decreased, but it's really more strategic because Ottawa is scaling back student and worker intakes while shifting focus towards economic and provincial immigration. And that's important. They're focusing more on PNPs. And we'll talk more about the importance of PNPs, but I also want to point out that there's something that you might have missed. There are also a lot of people that are not included in this plan, but IRCC announced two one-time initiatives that could add over 150,000 permanent residents in the next 2 years. First, a protected persons initiative will grant PR to about 115,000 asylum claimants who are already in Canada. So these are the people who are already in Canada. We're not talking about net new asylum claimants from outside of Canada. Second, they've also announced a TR to PR measure that will transition almost 33,000 work permit holders to PR in the same period. So, again, these are international workers, foreign workers who are already working in Canada, and the government plans to transition them to PR as they did before. And this matters because the official cap of 380,000 PRs per year might be a bit misleading. Because if you include these extra pathways, Canada's intake is over 1 million people in the next 2 years. So while the government is framing it as stabilizing numbers, the fine print shows that it's shifting to large groups from temporary to permanent status rather than shrinking immigration altogether. So that is very important. The second thing is the government is controlling the narrative by saying numbers are frozen, when in reality, it's just shifting people from temporary to permanent status quietly behind the scenes. So, yes, the plan looks cautious on paper, but if you're reading between the lines, Canada's immigration system is still growing faster than it appears, just in a more controlled, less visible way. Yes, the numbers have changed drastically, but what really matters is how these changes will affect you as an applicant. At first glance, lower overall PR targets might sound bad: fewer spots, more competition, longer wait times. But in reality, the stabilization of PR numbers could actually improve processing efficiency. IRCC isn't slashing the total number, it's keeping PR steady at 380,000 per year, but they're reducing new temporary resident entries. That means fewer new files will be entering the system and more focus will be on in Canada applicants, people who are already working or studying here. As a result, express entry, PNP, TR to PR applications could move faster because IRCC's operational pressure shifts from volume management to selection quality. However, the competition for those 380,000 spots will be tougher, especially in economic streams. So you can expect a higher CRS score, especially early next year, until IRCC rebalances with the category based rounds. If you already have Canadian work experience, strong language scores, or provincial ties, your chances are better than ever. But if you're applying from abroad without Canadian experience, you can expect a very, very tough competition to get your PR from outside of Canada. So, this is where the impact is most visible and disruptive. Canada is cutting new study permit applications in half. So, as I said earlier, from 306 to 155,000 people next year. And it's a long term cap that will stay throughout the next 3 years. So, this means, as I said earlier, that you'll see fewer study permit approvals, especially for lesser established designated learning institutes. You can expect a higher refusal rate for colleges or programs that are easier to get into, especially 1 year diplomas, 2 year diplomas. And I think IRCC will prioritize applicants in healthcare, tech, and essential fields, as well as Francophone students, because that aligns with IRCC's goals. These are the in demand areas. So, some provinces and institutions will run out of allocations quite early. So, I would suggest that if you are looking to apply for study permit next year, you should apply early in the year, as soon as possible. But if you do get approved, I think then your chances of PR might be good, especially if you chose a program that is in demand in that particular province where you're applying. Visitor visas, they weren't capped directly in the levels plan, but there might be some indirect impact because the overall policy is to reduce the number of temporary residents. And IRCC is also being a lot stricter about why you're coming to Canada to prevent overstays on unauthorized work. So visitor visas will still be issued, but if your visit has a clear purpose, for example, you're visiting a family member, or there is a conference that's very important, or that may be a business travel that is very relevant, you should include very relevant documentation and justify this and apply well in advance, at least 3 to 6 months before travel. There's also a lot of speculation about the proposed C-12 bill. I've been getting some questions about that. So, the Strengthening Canada's Immigration System and Borders Act, aka Bill C-12, gives the federal government sweeping new powers to suspend, refuse, or cancel large groups of immigration and visa applications whenever it deems that it is in the public interest. This means that IRCC could legally cancel thousands of pending files all at once. And if a country or a visa stream is flagged for high fraud or non compliance reasons, IRCC can just cancel their applications. And according to some internal documents that were cited by CBC News, these proposed powers were originally drafted after concerns about fraudulent applications from India and Bangladesh. The documents also showed that asylum claim numbers from Indian nationals rose sharply from around 500 per month in the mid of 2023 to nearly 2,000 by the mid of 2024, an increase of 4 times. Canadian and US agencies have reportedly formed a joint group to identify and cancel fraudulent visas, and they've named India and Bangladesh as country specific. Uh, um, they've reported some country specific challenges related to these two nations. So while the government publicly frames these measures as a way to control border volumes and improve processing integrity, the language of the bill allows broad discretion, raising fears that it could disproportionately affect Indian applicants, even those with genuine files. And this concern isn't hypothetical. Canada previously cancelled about 280,000 federal skilled worker applications in 2012 to clear a backlog. And that left many hopeful immigrants without any recourse. So that's just the reality. This can happen, but let's not panic just yet, because um, this is still a bill. And for those of you who don't know, in Canada, a bill must pass three readings in the House of Commons, then three readings in the Senate before receiving royal assent from the Governor General to become law. So this bill, C12, is currently at the committee stage where MPs can still propose amendments before it advances. The best course of action for you right now is to, especially if you're from India or Bangladesh, is to stay alert and ensure that your documentation is complete, it's verifiable. And under Bill C12, IRCC could enforce longer screening times, demand additional verification, you could receive procedural fairness letters, and they can even cancel entire groups of applications if they decide to exercise this new power. So this is important just to understand that on the one hand, some numbers are being cut, like express entry, federal skilled worker, study permit, and on the other side, this Bill C12 could really make things difficult for a lot of applicants. There's also a strong focus on Francophone immigration in this year's plan. The federal government has long promised to bring more French speaking newcomers, and the ultimate goal is still to reach 12% Francophone admissions by 2029. But the new 2026-28 immigration levels plan shows a more cautious approach in the short term. So here's what the numbers look like. In 2026, the target for Francophone immigration is 9%, which is about 30,000 people, down from 9.5% in last year's plan. In 2027, it rises slightly to 9.5%, around 32,000 people. And by 2028, the target increases to 10.5%, about 35,000 people. So out of all the people that will be coming to Canada as permanent residents, Canada wants about 10% of them to be Francophones. So at first sight, this might seem like a small adjustment, but it tells us something important. Ottawa is quietly lowering short-term expectations as it makes broader cuts to temporary and humanitarian programs, and it is keeping the Francophone numbers stable. So if you are someone who can speak French at a good level, you still have a very big advantage in Canada's immigration system. French continues to be a major factor in both express entry and several PNPs, including Ontario, Manitoba, New Brunswick. And this year, over 41% of all invitations to apply came from Francophone only draws. And if you include bilingual points, that number jumps to around 68%, which means that maybe you were not invited through the Francophone category, but you still got points for your French language skills. So if you're thinking about immigrating, learning French or improving your proficiency to NCLC 7 or higher can make a huge difference. NCLC 7 basically translates to CLB 7 in French, meaning you can communicate comfortably in French in most workplace and social situations. So even though the 2026-2028 plan slightly lowers near-term targets, being bilingual remains one of the most powerful advantages that you can have in Canada's immigration system. And I know a lot of people, even international students who came here a couple of years ago, they started learning French and they have achieved NCLC 7 in French just to increase their chances of immigration. Now, the strange thing is, I don't know if the government was aware that people would be doing that. I think originally this program was designed for people who are francophones, who's maybe French is their first language, and they wanted to bring those people in so they could do jobs where they can speak French. But what's happening is a lot of people have started learning French so they can get points for French, get their PR, and then they'll probably be working in English because that's their second language or first language in some cases. So I don't know if I agree with this high target of francophones outside of Quebec. I think people will use this loophole, but this loophole is available and a lot of people are using it and it's not illegal. Okay, so the big question, should you apply now or is it all over? Should you wait? The 2026 plan still heavily favors applicants already in Canada, particularly those with express entry profiles, those who have work experience, those who have strong language scores, or they have some sort of a provincial connection. Maybe they studied from different provinces that have good PNP programs, or maybe they have certain relatives, close relatives in provinces like Saskatchewan, Alberta. But IRCC is now processing fewer temporary resident files. PR application timelines are expected to stabilize. However, the future plans may bring stricter eligibility criteria as the government will become more selective. So, delaying your application could mean missing the next TR to PR pathway, which might open suddenly and fill up within days, much like the 2021 program. The only exception is that if you're still strengthening your profile, improving your language results, gaining more Canadian work experience, or completing studies, in that case, use this time strategically so that when the next window opens, your application stands out and you're more competitive. And when I say strategic, that can mean a number of things. For some people, it might mean learning French. For others, it might mean getting your spouse to take a language exam. I'm still surprised by the number of people who are not maximizing their express entry CRS score despite being in Canada for a couple of years now. So do your calculations, see where you're at in the province where you live, see what your express entry CRS score is, and how you can maximize. If you're someone who is outside of Canada right now, and again, that's a question I get very often, should I apply to Canada now? Is it even worth it? If your plan is to come and study and go back, which I don't think a lot of people have that intention, a lot of people who apply for study permits, they want to get Canadian PR or at least get some Canadian experience. So if your intention is to come live in Canada, maybe even become permanent resident, what I would suggest is you, on a piece of paper or Excel or whatever, you should plan out your whole journey. So work backwards. How will you get PR? Maybe through express entry, but express entry scores are pretty high. Even if you get 1 year of Canadian work experience, you might not have enough score. So if not express entry, what's your other options? PNP is a very good option. PNP numbers are increasing. So if PNP is your path to PR, which province is most suitable for you based on your past experience, based on your ties to that province, based on the type of program, type of education you want to get? Which province is very suitable for your planned education? Within that province, how many points will you get if you complete your, let's say, 2 year degree? Where will you end up? What else do you need to be amongst the top applicants within that province? For some people, the answer might be to get at least 1 year of foreign work experience before coming to Canada. For others, it might mean working on your English or French language skills before you even come to Canada. For others, it might mean saving more money, waiting to apply to a more solid program, which might be more expensive, like UFT or University of Waterloo, University of British Columbia. For others, it just might mean not applying at all because your score just won't be good enough to be competitive. So think about that before you apply for your study permit. Similarly, if you're someone who has found a job offer in Canada, definitely consider the path to PR. Just getting a job offer based on an LMIA or maybe even an LMIA exempt job offer is not good enough. You have to see how this connects to your PR pathway. So do those calculations early, see where you end up. If that's still a realistic option for you, you can pursue this. Otherwise, maybe it's best to just wait or look elsewhere. If you need any help with sort of this planning, I'm happy to schedule a call. You can scan this QR code that you are seeing on the screen, or just visit the website, and we can figure out a strategy for you. I can give you honest feedback about your chances of PR. If you're not a good candidate, I always let people know right away, openly. I don't sugarcoat things, but that's what you should do. Focus more on PR, strengthen your applications, make sure you submit the right evidence, and that's the best you can do. That's the only thing that's in your control right now. I'll quickly see if there are any questions. If not, that'll be the end of my call. I mean, my presentation. There's a question. What does it mean, sponsor and applicant and co-signer? So are you talking about parental sponsorship where there is a co-signer? In parental sponsorship, you have a co-signer where if you, let's say, are sponsoring your parents or grandparents for their PR, you can have a co-signer, let's say your spouse or common law partner, and both of your incomes can be combined to show that you meet the minimum income requirements. Okay. All right, Osama, if you have any other questions, feel free to send me an email or schedule a call and we can discuss your case in more details. That's it for today. If you need any help, feel free to get in touch. Thank you so much.